laughter echoed across the elegant courtyard like shards of glass cutting into skin. A group of teenagers, dressed in expensive clothes and dripping with entitlement, surrounded a girl who kept her eyes fixed on the tiled floor. Her name was Isla Carroway, the daughter of a powerful CEO, yet at that moment, she looked like the loneliest person in the world. The jagged scar across her right cheek, the mark of a childhood accident, was the cruel target of their mockery. Words like monster, broken doll, and Scarface pierced her heart. She tried to hold her tears, but her trembling hands betrayed her. All she wanted was to disappear, to not be noticed, to be invisible in a world that had judged her since the age of 6. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of seeing beauty where others see flaws, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it today, and subscribe to Kindness Journal so more stories of courage and love can reach hearts around the world. Don't just watch. Be part of the change. Isla wasn't supposed to be here. She had begged her father to let her stay home instead of attending the charity luncheon at his company's luxury hotel. But he had insisted, saying she needed to be seen, that she couldn't keep hiding from the world forever. He had no idea what it felt like to walk into a room and see eyes shift, whispers spread, and sneers form. She had dressed carefully that morning, pulling her long brown hair over her face, hoping it would be enough to shield her. But nothing could shield her from cruelty. Standing near the serving station, unnoticed at first, was Elias Rowen, a 38-year-old single father working as a waiter at the hotel. His uniform was pressed but old, his shoes scuffed from years of wear. Life had not been kind to Elias. After losing his wife in a car accident 6 years ago, he had been raising his 8-year-old son alone while juggling multiple jobs to survive. His eyes were tired, but behind them lived a quiet strength. That day, when he heard the cruel laughter and turned to see Isla surrounded, his chest tightened. He recognized that expression on her face, the same one his son wore when other kids mocked him for not having a mother. Elias set down the tray he carried and walked toward her. Every step was deliberate, as though the weight of the moment demanded courage. The laughter grew louder, crueler, until Elias reached the center of the circle. He didn't say a word. Instead, he reached out his hand to Isla. For a moment the world stood still. Isla froze, her heart pounding. Nobody had ever stepped between her and the taunts before. Nobody had ever chosen to stand beside her when she was at her lowest. She looked at his hand, rough, scarred, but steady, and something in her soul whispered to take it. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her trembling fingers into his. The teenagers laughed even louder, mocking the sight of a scarred girl holding hands with a mere waiter. But Elias didn't flinch. He lifted his chin, his voice calm yet firm, telling them without words that their cruelty had no power here. Isla felt a strange warmth spread through her chest as he led her away, their hands still linked. For the first time in years, she wasn't running alone. Later that day, Isla found herself sitting on a quiet bench outside the hotel, sunlight spilling across the gardens. She kept staring at her hand, the one he had held. Elias returned with a small paper cup of lemonade, paid for with the last few coins in his pocket, and offered it to her. She whispered a soft, "Thank you." Her voice fragile like glass. Elias simply nodded. He didn't pity her. He didn't stare at her scar like it was something shameful. He just looked at her like she was a person. That small act, that simple kindness, meant more to Isla than all the luxury and wealth her family possessed. Isla's life had always been gilded on the outside but hollow on the inside. She grew up in mansions, chauffeured cars, and private schools, but she had no friends, no safe place. Her father cared about reputation, her mother was distant, and society only saw her scar. But now there was Elias, a man who had nothing yet offered her everything she truly needed: dignity, respect, and kindness. Over the weeks that followed, Isla began visiting the hotel secretly. She wasn't there for the glamour of her father's empire, she was there to see Elias. He would be cleaning tables, carrying trays, or fixing broken glasses, but his smile would always soften when he saw her. Sometimes they would talk, about small things at first, like books she liked or the flowers in the garden. But slowly, she began to share pieces of her pain. She told him about the accident that left her scarred, about the loneliness, about the way her heart hurt every time someone flinched at her face. Elias listened quietly, never interrupting, never rushing her. One afternoon, as golden daylight filled the garden, Elias shared his own story. He told her about losing his wife, about the nights he sat in the dark holding his crying son, wondering if he was strong enough to go on. He told her about the shame he felt when people looked down on him for being a waiter, as though his worth was tied to his uniform. And then he told her something she would never forget, that scars, whether on skin or heart, were proof of survival, not weakness. Isla's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, someone understood. Not because they pitied her, but because they had walked through fire too. Elias's words were like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She realized then that kindness often came from those who had suffered the most. But not everyone approved. When her father discovered she was spending time with a hotel waiter, his anger was swift. He confronted Isla in his office, his voice sharp, accusing her of shaming the family name. "You are a Carroway," he thundered. "You cannot be seen with people beneath us." His words cut deeper than any mockery from strangers. For years she had craved his acceptance, his love, but once again, all he saw was reputation. Isla left the mansion that night with tears streaming down her face. She found herself walking to the modest apartment complex where Elias lived. When he opened the door, surprised to see her trembling at his doorstep, she broke down. He didn't ask questions. He just let her cry, then gave her a blanket and his son's favorite stuffed bear to hold. Sitting there, surrounded by chipped walls and the faint smell of laundry detergent, Isla felt safer than she had ever felt in her father's mansion. In the days that followed, rumors spread. People mocked even louder now, not just about her scar, but about her being seen with a poor single dad. The tabloids ran cruel headlines, and whispers followed her wherever she went. Yet through it all, Elias never let go of her hand. His quiet strength became her shield. His son, too, began to adore her, climbing onto her lap with innocent joy, never once noticing the scar that adults obsessed over. In his eyes, she was just Miss Isla, the kind lady who listened to his stories and helped with homework. Slowly, Isla began to change. She started wearing her hair differently, no longer hiding her face. She looked in mirrors longer, no longer recoiling. She began to believe that maybe her scar wasn't the end of her story, but the beginning of one where she was stronger than she had ever imagined. The turning point came at another charity event months later, once again at the hotel. The same teenagers who had mocked her were there, smirking as she walked in. But this time, she didn't lower her head. She didn't hide behind her hair. She walked straight to Elias, who was working as usual, and without hesitation took his hand. Gasps filled the room. Whispers spread like wildfire. But Isla didn't care. For the first time, she wasn't ashamed of who she was or of who stood beside her. Her father, watching from across the hall, felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Shame not for Isla, but for himself. He saw the strength in her eyes, the quiet dignity in the waiter who held her hand, and realized that all his wealth and power had never given his daughter what this man had: acceptance. The world would keep mocking, keep judging, but it no longer mattered. Isla had found her courage, and it came from knowing she was not alone. She had learned that scars didn't define her. They told the story of her survival. And the man who took her hand had taught her that love wasn't about status or perfection. It was about standing beside someone when the world turned its back. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps spread more stories that remind us of the power of compassion and resilience. And here's a special request before we close. Comment below with the words, "Kindness heals." If you believe scars, whether seen or unseen, are proof of strength, not shame.